Can you beat Fire Emblem the Sacred Stones with only Hector? But Mr. Fire Emblem man, Hector isn't in the Sacred Stones. Well children, that's where you're wrong. Bang, there he is, he's in the game, I put him there. Now sit next to that nice looking spider and be quiet. I think Hector can solo this game, but I can't solo this video, so I've called in a friend to give me emotional support. Say hello, Kratos.
Hello Bafe and everyone, I'm glad to be here for today's video and very excited to see how Hector does in a solo run format.
Kratos is pretty much the YouTuber for Sacred Stones solo runs, so it's nice to have a veteran on hand while I take on this challenge, and we'll be hearing some insights from him as I go through this run. The rules I will be using are the same ones Kratos uses for his solo runs. The only unit I can use is Hector. I'm playing on the hardest difficulty. I will not be utilizing exploits or grinding, which mostly applies to the arena and the Tower of Valny, and I can only use a single healing item per map, except for healing items obtained during the chapter. Now that I've introduced Kratos and explained the rules, I can introduce the star of the show, Hector, who has been making his way through the prologue on screen. These are Hector's level 1 base stats and his growths, and his vanilla FE7 starting inventory of the Wolf Bale, a hand axe, and a vulnerary. Kratos, do you want to talk us through Hector's stats and growths and how he compares stat-wise to some of the units you've done solo runs with?
So the main thing I'm seeing here with Hector is high strength, defense, and HP in terms of both growth and bases. So from an on-paper standpoint, we're pretty blessed, I would say, with 60% strength growth, which is absolutely ridiculous. And it's even better considering his skill growth isn't awful with 45%. While Hector's hit rate will probably still have some issues, if I were to guess, since axes are pretty weak on the hit rate front, his decent skill should help him quite a bit in that. Overall, he's looking good. The obvious weakness will be in resistance, which is a stat that sometimes is overlooked but can be fun to have in the later stages of the game when you're doing a solo run specifically. Luck and speed will also be faltering a little bit, I think. But even with those two being a little lower, you should generally be fine and hopefully get a few lucky level ups that can help out a little bit. But most importantly, his massive defense stat will probably be the story here. That will carry him easily through the early mid game and even probably pose a challenge to the Demon King in the late game.
I definitely do think that Hector's high defense is going to be his main asset in this run. We can already see even in these early chapters he's not taking very much damage from these early game enemies. The only difficulty he has at this point in the game is accuracy, which you can see here on the low hit rates he has with the hand axe. I could use the Wolf Bale for higher hit rates, but I have been trying to conserve the Wolf Bale's uses as it will likely be very useful for killing certain bosses. The hand axe does break eventually and we have to move on to the Wolf Bale for the final few enemies. We can see here on the chapter 1 boss, the Wolf Bale is a pretty great personal weapon. Hector might be strong enough to not really need the Wolf Bale to kill, but it is definitely a great weapon to have for some of the more tricky armors and cavalry units. In chapter 3, to conserve our Wolf Bale uses, we do get the chance to buy iron axes, but we also do get the hatchet off of Ross, which has fantastic accuracy. This is the only axe in the early game we won't have too much chance to miss with. Most of the time Hector will have a decent chance to miss his attacks, which is going to be a common occurrence for him since the axes he's locked to are the weapon type with the worst inbuilt hit rates. But he really doesn't get punished because his defense has already reached a high enough benchmark from these level ups to take 0 damage from a lot of the enemies. This being my first solo run, my strategy isn't super fine-tuned. I am playing a little clunky as I find my rhythm for the run. For example, on this map, I wasn't sure how to make the reinforcements on the left side go for Hector on the fort when the other units we've got force deployed in the top corner are actually closer to their range. So I awkwardly backpedal to try and force them to attack Hector, which isn't particularly optimal, but it does work. This is meant to be a solo run, so the idea is that my other units don't see any combat unless it is completely unavoidable. So I do end up making mistakes with enemy AI where I have to deviate from my strategy with Hector to try and grab enemies that will otherwise be engaging my other units when they are force deployed. But even if it doesn't look pretty, there's no need to reset since the backpedaling does actually work to keep all of the enemies attacking only Hector, and we're able to kill the boss to end the map. Chapter 3 is way more straightforward. There is no strategy to it really. You just break some walls and walk in a straight line until you reach the boss. And even with thrown bonuses reducing our hit rates, we still don't really have any difficulty dealing with him. Chapter 4 is also a very easy map, but it does bring us our first magical enemies, which are going to be Hector's biggest weakness in this run. Thankfully, Hector can one-shot the moguls with a hand hand axe, so they don't pose a threat, but later on we are going to have a much tougher time against these magical enemies further into the run. Aside from that, this map is basically just free XP, so we can skip past it. Chapter 5 is a bit more interesting as it has our first side objective of visiting all 4 villages. We don't care about the big reward of the guiding ring, but we do care about the first stat boosters we can get. The Draco shield honestly is a bit pointless right now as we have a good chance of capping defense with Hector by level 20 without it, but we can hold on to it until after he promotes in chapter 17 to give him an extra boost in the late game. The secret book is very nice, however, as we have already seen Hector can struggle with hit rates because of the low accuracy on axes and his skill stat being a little shaky, so +2 skill will be incredibly nice. We do actually manage to visit the other villages in this chapter just by charging in with Hector and intercepting every one of the brigands that could destroy the villages. Hector's high defense makes that a very viable strategy. Even Joshua with a killing edge can't damage Hector. He actually lands a crit here for 0 damage, which is very funny. Apart from me leaving Natasha a bit too close to some enemies and having to do some silly maneuvers to keep her out of the way, there's not really any challenge to this map. We don't even need the wolf bale for the boss Tsar. We kill him very easily with an iron axe, which brings us the last level up we're going to have for a very long time as we hit level 20. 5x is a bit of a weird map for a solo run. Since Hector is replacing Erica, and there's obviously no Erica here in this chapter, we just have to Orson our way through it as fast as possible so we can get back to the Hector solo. While chapter 6 is playing in the background, let's take a look at our lovely level 20 Hector and see how he turned out. We have Hector's average stats at level 20 at the bottom of the screen here, and as you can see, our Hector is actually looking incredibly average in most places. Every stat is basically bang on the average value with the exception of our skill and our defense. We do actually cap our defense, which is great. I'm very happy to have a defense blessed Hector, and skill is also above the average, which is nice. This is without the secret book and Draco shield we got in chapter 5. We cap defense anyway, so the Draco shield will sit in our convoy until we promote, and the secret book I actually got distracted by 5x and forgot we had it, so I don't end up giving it to Hector until chapter 9, believe it or not. So these stats you're seeing here are all natural, no performance enhancing drugs on this channel. Kratos, do you want to talk a bit about how important stat rolls can be for these solo runs?
If you've watched my channel before, you know that we've had a few runs where resets have happened. It doesn't always go smoothly, and sometimes these are due to just awful stat rolls and being unlucky. For example, I had a Garcia who got stuck on chapter 9 because he was slightly below average in most of his stats and couldn't simply dodge enough or absorb enough damage because his defense was too low, and the route map with limited healing caused him to have to deal with a lot of units that he didn't really have a good matchup with, such as the sword units that are very abundant on that map. So Garcia had a hard time and we had to force ourselves to get a reset. So sometimes simply having to give the game a quick restart to fix your stats is necessary, whether it's in the need to achieve an at least average looking character, which sometimes you do get really screwed, but in some more serious cases, like in Garcia's run, we had to have an above average character to get over the finish line, and same thing for the Erica run that I initially did. So these level ups are very crucial, and growth units tend to do pretty well in solo runs because they get to have that time to roll those stats, whereas units that might start with higher bases but don't have a lot of growths will falter sometimes. But Hector luckily has good growth, so hopefully things go well.
Well, thankfully we've been blessed with the good Hector, and he's actually so good that we beat the boss fast enough to save the villagers from the spider and get the Orion's Bolt, which doesn't do anything for us, but it is extra money, I guess. Chapter 7 is super easy, barely an inconvenience, so we'll just skip straight over it. Chapter 8 has a little more to it. It does start with a bit of time pressure as you have to move to the left to save Ephraim and the Cavs. This isn't so much about protecting them as it is about stopping them from entering combat, as again, this is meant to be a 100% solo effort wherever possible. A squishier unit can find it tricky to get to the left quickly, but Hector with his cap defense can bulldoze straight through without any problem. From there, it is just winding our way up through the corridor to get to the central room, and this is where I realized that I screwed up pretty badly. In the right side chest, there is an angelic robe, which would be super nice to help Hector sponge the big hits he'll eventually be taking from the mid to late game magical enemies, but I don't have a chest key. I didn't think to save the chest keys from 5x to use here, and there are no chest keys on the map. Even the thief that spawns from the stairs has an AI that makes him attack you instead of going for the chest, so we can't even let the thief turn it into a droppable item, so I have no way of getting it, which is gutting. I could technically reset the whole run to correct my mistake, but missing out on the 7 HP isn't necessarily going to be a death sentence for Hector late on, so I do decide to continue with the run and just pray that I don't regret my my mistake. Dorado does have some pretty beefy stats for this point in the game. I thought this was where the Wolf Bale was going to have to come into play, but it turns out that an Iron Axe is more than up to the challenge. Hector does have some pretty bonkers stats by this point in the game, and the enemies haven't quite managed to catch up to him yet, so this is a very, very easy boss kill. If you've seen a lot of Kratos' solo runs, you will know that we do have to take the Erica route because Erica is who Hector has replaced, so Ephraim route will completely mess everything up. Chapter 9, I finally realised I have the secret book in the convoy, so I used that at last to bring Hector's skill up to 16. This map has some great items available, with a Draco shield in the left village and an angelic robe as a reward for saving both of the villages. However, the pirates are super aggressive and will destroy the villages before you even have a chance to get close to them, so both of these items are a bust. The speed ring that Amelia enters the map with, however, is fair game, but I didn't realise if you're not fast enough, Amelia frickin' leaves. I didn't even realise that was a thing. I've never played slow enough on this map to see that happen. So I do reset, and this time I am fast enough to make it down to her, but I stand in her range and I accidentally kill her. This girl really doesn't want to hand over that speed wing. After another reset, I make it down to successfully recruit her with Hector, get that speed wing, and immediately use it to bring his speed up to 13. And then we just finish slogging our way through the enemies and kill Binks to end the chapter. Next up is the Inez map, and him and Garrick are honestly putting in work over here, mowing down enemies, but there's nothing I can do to stop them. It's not like I can get down to them quickly. This is the sword map and our hit rates are super shaky. Even with that 16 skill we now have on Hector, he just keeps missing, so I can't push through the starting position quickly, even if I wanted to. I actually decided to try going straight for the boss, as there's no item objectives I care about and we are capped at level 20, so the extra XP won't help us at all. And then Tethys gets hit by 2 18s in a row, which is so stupidly unlikely, but it does mean we lose the goddess icon, which I would quite like, so I do reset. Tethys stays alive on the next attempt. I don't know what she was playing at there. If you don't know, FE8 uses a 2RN system where the displayed hit chance is not the actual percentage chance. There's a conversion table online you can use, and a displayed hit of 18 is actually a 6.6% chance of hitting. So the odds of getting hit by 2 18s back to back with the true hit conversion is about a 0.4% chance. That was so messed up. It did definitely make me extra nervous going up against Pablo. He is the first scary boss we've really had in the run. He hits on res, which is Hector's main weakness, and more importantly, he has 7 crit, which would allow him to one-shot Hector, and after that 0.4% chance on Tethys, that 7% seems like a real possibility here. Thankfully though, when we do roll the dice, he doesn't proc a crit, and in this instance, my worrying was for nothing. At the start of chapter 11, we take that goddess icon from Tethys and use it to boost Hector's luck up to 10, which is nice. In this chapter, I don't really care about speed. If La Rochelle or Dosler die, that doesn't affect us, but I do want to make sure I get the chest on the right hand side with a secret book in, because I really want any point of skill I can get to patch up Hector's hit rate against sword units. Those misses are really starting to slow him down. There's a few droppable chest keys on this map, which I'm happy about, as we can save them to open chests in future and make sure we don't miss out on great items like that angelic robe we missed in chapter 8. We use one of those chest keys for the secret book in the chest here, and then use it to boost Hector's skill up to 18. Finding all the enemies in the fog to route the chapter is annoying on this map, especially as a solo, but eventually we get them all and we move on to chapter 12. Except not really, because I actually forgot to press record because I'm dumb, so there's no footage for chapter 12, but it is a really uneventful chapter. The only thing of note is the energy ring we get from Ewan. We already have 19 strength on our Hector, but I decided to use it anyway, since Hector should cap strength very quickly after he eventually gets his promo, so I don't mind the one wasted point of strength from the stat booster, and I'd rather take any boost I can get right now, as we are getting into the hardest section of the game for Hector. Chapter 13 that's been playing on screen does have some more scary enemies on it. We are definitely getting into that portion of the game where Hector still being unpromoted is causing him more challenges. In the previous map, Hector actually took pretty serious damage from magical enemies, and I started to really feel the limited healing rule that we have in place. I'm using the same healing rules that Kratos has established in his runs, so Kratos, do you want to explain why you've made your healing rules the way they are, and where having limited healing tends to cause the most challenges in your solo runs?
The healing rules came from my original solo run, when I did the Erica run. I remember doing the initial video and basically soloing the game with Erica with very little trouble, since I could simply spam healing on tough maps. And since you get so many promo items in Sacred Stones, you can sell all of them in this type of run, and money never becomes an issue because you have just an unlimited amount of it. So having a full convoy of elixir wasn't ever a problem. It was easy to do and easy to abuse. So as I was doing the first run, I came to the conclusion that going about it that way didn't make a very interesting video to watch because the solution was just spam healing. So I ended up falling on the one healing item solution or rule that we have currently going on. Some of the map that tend to be tough because that rule are very dependent on the type of characters, but chapter 8 can sometimes be a little scary because of the side quest of rescuing Ephraim. It leads to often a rushed position that makes you take more damage than you like. Chapter 9 recently has proven to be a roadblock, especially for hero crest characters, since the promo happens after chapter 10, so they kind of get into a situation where they have to be a little bit more careful on that map. Other than that, chapter 16 can be quite problematic for lords, especially since their promo is late, and of course both chapter 18 and the final map are tough with the limited healing, because most units have pretty poor resistance.
I definitely am getting more scared at this point in the run of the powerful magical enemies like Pablo, and having limited healing does make me a little bit more nervous. I actually decided on this map to run towards Pablo and deliberately put myself in his range, and that's because the warrior that spawns in with him comes with a droppable sword slayer, which I really wanted to get, but I had a ton of difficulty actually pulling it off. Each attempt either had the warrior switch weapons so the sword slayer is no longer droppable, or we get murdered by Pablo. This is actually the first game over I've had so far, so it really shows that Hector is now starting to struggle a lot more. On my 4th attempt though, I am able to kill the warrior without him switching weapons and get the sword slayer at last, but I do it at the expense of healing and leave myself in death range of Pablo's purge, but we get lucky and pull off the dodge, meaning we survive the final turn of the chapter and we can move on. Hopefully all of that effort for the sword slayer will pay off and be worth it. Chapter 14 actually starts off very badly with all 3 of the shamans in this starting room hitting me back to back, which is an exact kill on Hector, so we immediately have to reset. Second time around though, I handled the initial shamans better and they actually have rolled lower on magic, so we don't have any issues. And after that, it's a pretty straightforward journey to the boss Carlisle, who is scary. We face crit, we get doubled, he hits on resistance, and even with the sword reaver we picked up on this map, we still have a decent chance of getting killed. However, with the sword slayer we got on the last chapter, we can actually one-shot him, and the multiplied effects of the weapon triangle means we don't get one-rounded if we do miss. But we do land the hit, and we successfully deal with the scariest enemy we've faced so far in a single slap of Hector's axe. After beating the boss, I do double back to get the energy ring that's in the bottom chest, which we can save for after promotion since we've already capped our strength, and then I seize to end the map. And now we're on to chapter 15, which I was pretty nervous for. I wiggle my way across the sand with Hector to come to Ephraim's aid, but I won't be able to save Noel though, so Kratos, do you want to say the line?
Everyone in the comments, say it with me. Bye-bye, Noel. Always feels good to do.
Beautiful. So yeah, Noel dies, but no one is sad about that. We do actually see Noel die quite a few times. I get multiple game overs from all the mage and shaman reinforcements that pack quite a punch against Hector's res stat. It takes a few attempts, but I do find a way of clearing the magical enemies without taking too much damage, and eventually once we've worked through all of the enemies, we get to the bosses Kalak and Volta. I did get the Metis' tome and the boots first, and then I take on Kalak, and that sword slayer is once again going to come in clutch here, since heroes count as an effective class for the sword slayer, and despite a few misses and an elixir used to keep ourselves alive, we do manage to hit 258s in the ends to kill Kalak. We were technically facing 2% crit on every one of those attacks from him, and a crit would have killed us, which would have made me super sad, but now that we have the Hoplon guard from Kalak, we will never have to face a crit again in this run, so that is great. And now we're on to Volta, who is super fast and doubles us, and he does also have the pierce skill where he can just ignore all of Hector's 20 defense, and that would be a tragic way for the chapter to end. The killer axe is our best option here, as it has good damage and accuracy, and a lucky crit would end things quicker, and we do get the crit. Our first attack, we proc that 35% crit, and we one-shot him. Chapter 15 is over, and we get Garm at last. The beautiful legendary axe with that 20 might and +5 speed boost. I am looking forward to using that. But before we can get the S rank to use it, first we need to beat chapter 16. Promotion is only a battle away, but we do have some terrifying magic enemies on this map that are capable of murdering us. I was smart though, I did visit the shop on the previous chapter and stock up on pure waters, so at least we can give ourselves a bit of a boost against them, but the siege tomes are still absolutely terrifying. There is actually a talisman in one of the chests in the top corner, which would be super helpful, but getting there before the thief swipes it and escapes didn't initially seem doable, so I kind of gave up on the possibility. After several early game overs to the warriors and Great Knight reinforcements, I realised that my only hope was to use the pillars in the bottom room to increase my dodge rates against them, but even with the extra 20 avoid, I was still getting smacked by a lot of their attacks, and I did game over to these promoted units several times before I fine-tuned my strategy. And even after we get through them, we still have to deal with the siege tome sages, and even with a pure water, we still take major damage, and we don't have a hope of dodging enough attacks to survive with only a single elixir, especially since we've had to burn one or two of those uses already just to handle the previous part of the map. This ended up being the single most painful chapter of the run, and it took an absolute ton of attempts. Hector ends up in this really weird situation on this map where his fixed Lord promotion means he is still unpromoted and relatively weak compared to all of the enemies on the map. Kratos, you've gone through this exact experience in your Erica solo run. How painful was it for you to deal with?
So as I alluded before, and as Baif is currently experiencing, this map is ridiculously tough to beat when you're stuck on an unpromoted Lord. With Erica, the pain actually started on chapter 14, very much earlier, where she gets decimated by the early Cavalier reinforcements. So her mid-game difficulties are a little bit more present than Hector's overall, but I did create the healing mulligan rule for this type of situation exactly. Basically, for characters who get stuck over and over again and don't have a clear solution out of the map, I allow the use of one extra healing item for a single map. This rule was created especially for Erica to succeed her solo run because of the late promo that she has.
Yes, I'm very glad that you implemented that mulligan healing rule in your Erica run, because I had to use that same rule here and give Hector a second elixir in order to get through this chapter. I also realised that if I dealt with the Great Knights quickly enough with the Wolf Bale, it meant I was free to kill the thief with the talisman, so we do actually get the +2 boost, taking us up to 7 resistance, and every little helps. For the sages, I realised that by placing myself correctly, I could run all the way across this corridor without ever being in range of both of the siege tomes at the same time. So I took the purge to the face, and on the second turn we get lucky and dodge the bolting, and I was able to sit on this pillar and dodge tank the bolting sage until he ran out of bolting uses, which is so useful. We then tried to do exactly the same thing with the purge sage, which is harder because we don't have any terrain and purge has an inherently higher hit rate than bolting, but breaking out our second elixir we are able to successfully break the purge tome. The sword slayer then puts in serious work against the heroes here, and then we kill one sage to give us the space for fighting Orson, and he is tough. His combination of spear and silver sword is really hard to handle. I tried my best here, but Orson freaking crits us and sends us all the way back to the start of the map, which is harrowing. Despite this massive setback, I did eventually manage to recreate the strategy of this run, including the talisman drop, and we get back to Orson. At this point I was praying to not get crit, but our first attack with the Wolf Bale, we actually crit him on a 7%. I couldn't believe it. It is finally over. We have cleared the infamous chapter 16, and in the most stylish way possible. And now we finally get our long-awaited promotion to Great Lord. Hector gets some very welcome promotion bonuses with 3 HP, 2 skill, 3 speed, 1 defense, and 5 res. I also used the stat boosters we have been saving, the energy ring and the Draco shield, to give us another 2 strength and defense on top of that. Apart from promoting in the battle preps, chapter 17 really doesn't have anything interesting going on, so we can skip straight into chapter 18. And this is a map I have been dreading almost as much as chapter 16. It has a lot of powerful Gorgons, but our res is actually at a bonkers 18 by this point after the promotion gains and all the level ups on the previous chapter. But even with that, we're still looking at around 20 damage at a time we take from the Gorgons, so pure waters are definitely needed here. The stone attack is by far the biggest problem on this map though. Our dodge rates aren't high high enough for my comfort zone, and a hit from stone will spell a death sentence. On my first attempt, I managed to deal with most of the Gorgons in the initial wave until the final one in the group hits me, and that's it. If you don't know already, stone stops you moving like sleep, but it also makes it impossible for you to dodge attacks, and even gives a massive crit boost to the enemy as well. One hit from stone at any point is a game over. On the second attempt, I tried to really prioritize dealing with the stone Gorgons first, and I even utilized a sneaky trick with Garm. Since having it equipped gives a passive +5 speed, it allows us to dodge tank the stones on enemy phase more effectively with 10 additional avoid. I also realized that running around in circles a bit can force a bunch of the Gorgons onto the trap tiles, which can deal with a couple of them without us getting into stone range. So between these tactics, I managed to deal with all of the stone enemies without facing too high hit rates, and managed to avoid getting stoned to death, but then it all falls apart. When we go into the range of the boss, we get stoned on a 29, and then it's game over. Attempt number 3, I do exactly the same strategy, and this time we dodge the 28, meaning we can easily one hit with Garm, where we actually crit, which is awesome. We all love the helicopter Hector animations. And from here, it's an easy job to clean up the final few enemies and end the map after only 3 attempts, though for me it felt way longer than that. Chapter 19 is actually the easiest map in the game. You literally rescue Mansell, sit on the throne, and press end turn until the map ends. And that's it. Moving on to chapter 20, this one is a bit of a slog. You have a ton of enemies and reinforcements to slowly trudge your way through, but we do hit level 20 here, so let's talk about our capped Hector's stats. Kratos, do you want to talk us through them?
Wow, this Hector is looking fantastic. Look at all the green on the page. And maybe it won't surprise Hector fans like Bafe and myself, but that's just your average Hector experience. And I'm not even exaggerating. Hector, considering all the stat booster, is literally sitting on most of his averages here. Except for resistance, in which he seems incredibly blessed. Even having it fully capped, meaning he's 3 to 4 points above his average. But other than that, that's just like an average Hector. We love to see that for him, and I'm expecting him to fully dominate going forward.
I do have to say, I'm pretty happy with how he's turned out. Our level 20 Hector really doesn't struggle with either of the bosses here. We don't even need to break out Garm to beat Morva. I could have done it, but I didn't want to waste the Garm uses on all of these scrubs that would have attacked on enemy phase after killing him. These reinforcements are never ending. They're so annoying, so I deal with Morva on enemy phase and just ignore the scrub enemies and seize the map. And now we're here, the final chapter. This map does have the final stat booster of the game, another angelic robe, which lets us get an extra 4 points to max out our HP stat. After all the stat boosters we've used, we actually only have 2 stats we didn't max out, being skill and speed, although we were only 1 point off of capping speed as well. Interestingly, the Gorgon in the angelic robe chest room actually causes 3 resets since I get hit by stone 3 times in a row, which was very funny, but we eventually get onto the Draco zombie, who actually can survive getting doubled by Garm, which is ridiculous. We do have enough move with the boots though, so that we can equip the hand axe, run away and heal after chipping on enemy phase, and then go in and finish him with Garm, but it does deal us a lot of damage. And then we get to Leon, and we can easily kill him if we enemy phase him first, but I didn't check the Gorgon's inventory and I get hit by a stone. I can't believe I died this way. I am so dumb. I then ended up with another 4 resets from stone hits in the chest room again, but eventually we get back to where we were. I kill all of the Gorgons this time so I don't repeat my mistake, and then we face Leon, and it's a very easy battle, honestly. And now it's time for the Demon King, and looking at this battle forecast, I thought we were in for a cakewalk with this battle. I attack him once and deal some major damage, but then we get pretty unlucky with the summons he brings up. We get a Draco zombie, a Shadow Shot Archmogul, and 2 Gorgons. I end up running away with Hector so I can deal with these tricky enemies one at a time, but the Mogul ends up targeting Ephraim, which is real scary. Thankfully, he pulls a bunch of dodges and survives long enough for Hector to come save him. Luckily, neither of the stone Gorgons hit us either, so I'm finally able to kill the Draco zombie and then return to fighting the Demon King himself. We only need 2 hits, but he dodges our first attack. We actually get a dodge as well, and we land our second attack. He then moves to 2 range, and we get a second dodge, and now it's just the final strike, and it is over. Hector has soloed the Sacred Stones. I am so proud of him. I do have one little thing to admit though. If you are counting elixir uses there, you might have noticed more than 3 uses in that final chapter. It's because my pea-brain thought that the Demon King fight was a separate chapter to the Leon bit. So I just automatically gave myself a new elixir allocation, but it wouldn't be a bad at Fire Emblem video without at least a few fuck-ups along the way. As I record the final commentary for this video, it has been weeks since I finished this run, so I'm not coming back and doing it again. Technically, you could call that a failed run, but tough, deal with it. So ignoring that bit, here we are. Hector has soloed the Sacred Stones. We can technically take a look at how long it took for him to complete the run, but I did spend a ton of time making notes on the gameplay while the game was still running on double speed, so I wouldn't put any stock in the actual time itself. Our turn count, however, is still a fairly useful metric to judge Hector's performance. He took 688 turns to complete the run. Kratos, was this roughly what you were predicting?
Don't put too much stock in using that late elixir on the Demon King map. People in my comments constantly tell me to consider the Demon King map a separate map and allow a new elixir. I just never do it because I'm stubborn. I think it's pretty much fine at that point. It's technically another map. I think it still counts. Anyways, here Hector with 688 turns is not going to break any speed records, unfortunately. But he's not the worst. That title stays with Erica. Or should I say with Ines, because he never completed the run, actually. But if I would have to pull out my tier list and put Hector somewhere, I would slot him just above Erica here, in my opinion. He did better than her, and he actually seems to have had less overall issues than Garcia and Colm had, but since I didn't do the run myself, I wouldn't go as far as saying that yet. But if we're only going by turns, I would slot him at the bottom there, a little bit above Erica though. But you can see that the big factor weighing against him is his late promotion, which Lords have to contend with, unfortunately, and it came and probably slowed him down a lot, just overall. So unfortunately, Hector doesn't break any records, but still does pretty good.
Thank you for all of your insights, Kratos, and thanks for being a part of the video. It has been great to have you on the channel.
No worries. Thank you for having me on your channel. It was a pleasure to watch a solo run from someone else's perspective.
Kratos does a lot of solo runs on his channel, and we did actually record a video together for his channel as well. So if you guys haven't seen that, then please click the link to go and watch that video. And if you came to this video from Kratos' channel, hopefully you consider subscribing and sticking around. I'll definitely be making more solo run videos in the future. I won't be stepping on Kratos' toes. As I said, he is the Sacred Stone solo run guy, but I have cooked up some cool ideas that I'm very excited to do and share with you guys. I do have to quickly shout out my Patreon members as always for helping to make these videos possible, especially my lords Sonic the Hedgehog, Path of O, Dark Jaden, Cowboy Bebop, and even more especially my Manakeets, Scott's Gaming World, Shadow Eclipse, Chai Tiefling, and Nawi Alamode. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.